Mr. Lewis, can you hear us in there?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, great. All right, Mr. Huslak, can you go ahead and call the case, please?
Judge, this is the State of Georgia versus Wilbert Lee Stevens. We are here for a preliminary hearing on one warrant, 21W02224, for one count of theft by receiving stolen property, a felony charge.
All right, Mr. Stevens, I know you've got your attorney there to consult with. We are holding this hearing by Zoom because of the pandemic. We are also streaming this live on YouTube. So just be cautious how you react to the testimony. We don't know who's watching the feed and what they'll make of it, okay? All right, Mr. Huslak, go ahead.
State is going to call Officer Stork. Officer, can you please raise your right hand for me? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide this court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sir.
Thank you. You can put your hand down now. And where are you employed?
I'm employed with the Gwinnett County Police Department.
And can you please state your first and last name for us?
Michael Stork.
And what position do you hold with the Gwinnett County Police Department?
I'm a police officer senior.
And does that mean you are a post-certified Georgia peace officer?
Yes, sir.
And did you hear the warrant number that I read out for the court a moment ago?
Yes, I did.
Are you the law enforcement officer that sought that warrant?
Yes, sir.
Can you please describe for us the facts and circumstances that led to you doing so?
So on February 15th, we had received a tip from a Forsyth County deputy in reference to a stolen 2017 blue BMW X5, which is a hatchback SUV, that had pinged in the area of, I believe we were informed of, like 6500 Oakbrook Parkway. That exact, numerical address didn't exist. Myself and other units began conducting an area check of the surrounding hotel and motels that are on about a 2-mile long strip of Oakbrook Parkway. As I was driving down Oakbrook Parkway, I was able to identify a vehicle that was at 6045 Oakbrook Parkway, which is the WTL extended stay. Myself and another officer parked a few hundred feet away from the vehicle where our vehicles couldn't be seen from the BMW. As we approached, I noticed a black male. He was standing about 3 or 4 parking spots to the left of the BMW. Not thinking anything of it, I gave him a generic greeting. It was how are you? Something along those lines. Not even thinking he had any connection with the BMW in itself. Given the circumstances and the level of the crime committed, myself and my partner were going to attempt to clear the vehicle with our service weapons. Once we had started making a direct path to the BMW, that's when the suspect, Mr. Wilbert Stevens, stated, are you guys looking at, it was something along the lines of like, are you looking at, that SUV? And I was like, the BMW X5, the blue one? He was like, yes, that's my car. I was like, oh, okay. So at that point, I had detained Mr. Stevens, placed him in handcuffs, and then the vehicle was cleared from there. While speaking with Mr. Stevens, I had read him his Miranda rights in the rear of one of the other officers' patrol vehicles, and I asked him how he had possession of the vehicle. Because after I placed him in handcuffs, he actually had the X5 key attached to him on a key ring to one of his belt loops. He had stated that he had taken the vehicle from up in Forsyth from I believe it was his sister is the victim, even though they don't have the same last name, to come up here to meet with his wife, who was not present at the WTL extended stay. He did have a room there, room 211, and he stated that he took the vehicle. He said he had every intent to return it, even though he had informed his sister 4 to 5 hours prior of us finding him that he was going to return the vehicle, which he never did. Forsyth County had found probable cause to obtain warrants on their end as well.
Thank you. So if I understand you correctly,
You're saying that the vehicle was actually taken from Forsyth County.
Yes, and we received a tip from, I believe it was I can't see the name of the Forsyth County deputy at this moment in my report, but he is listed in there. There it is, Officer Jones.
And were you able to confirm when the vehicle was reported stolen?
It was earlier in the day. It was
Earlier that same day.
I made contact with Officer Jones, and as we were speaking with him when I had the defendant in handcuffs, he was still finishing up his report and obtaining warrants as well.
Okay. And I think you did say this, but do you know who it was who actually reported it stolen?
It was the victim listed in my report, who, from my understanding, is his sister, Miss Ira Hicks.
Okay.
And she was able to later come and retrieve her vehicle.
Have you had any conversations with Miss Hicks?
Not in regards to the theft of her vehicle. I did call her while on scene to see if she'd be able to come retrieve her vehicle in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay.
And so the area that you, just
To be clear, the area that you located the vehicle in, that was in Gwinnett County?
Yes, sir. It's right there. Oak Workers right off of Jimmy Carter and I-85.
and do you see Mr. Stevens?
On any of the screens in front of you right now?
Stipulate, Judge.
Yes, sir.
All right, he stipulated to the identity.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Just one moment, please, Judge.
Sure.
I don't believe I have any further questions at this
This
time.
time.
Mr. Lewis?
Is it Officer Stork?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Officer Stork. Vehicle was taken in Forsyth and recovered in Gwinnett, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Same day, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It was within 4 to 5 hours, to the best of my knowledge.
Fantastic. My client, when you were looking at the vehicle, according to your testimony, said, yes, I'm responsible for that vehicle, something to that effect, right? Is that right? He didn't disassociate himself from the vehicle, is that right?
Correct, sir. And when I detained him in handcuffs and searched him incident to arrest, he actually had the physical BMW X5 key inside of the leather holder on his belt.
Okay, did my client or his sister indicate to you that my client lived with his sister?
I believe your client may have, but to the best of my knowledge, I do not remember. I do recall speaking with the victim quite shortly, and she had made the exclamation that the defendant has never had use or has never been given proper use or approval to use the vehicle.
Okay, and I'll accept that statement for what it is. Did she indicate the sister that my client lived with her at any time?
To the best of my knowledge, I believe so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, that's fine. Next question. Did the sister of my client indicate that my client works with his sister in her business?
No, sir, I did not get that in depth.
Okay. Did my client or the sister indicate that my client had texted the sister and indicated that he had the vehicle?
Your client had indicated that to me, and he also indicated that he wished to return the vehicle, but it had been a vast couple of hours after that, and he stated that even while we were speaking with him, that he still had the intent to return it, and he had informed his sister that he was going to, but he never did.
Okay, I got that. And so as best as you can understand, my client did communicate with his sister that he had her vehicle. That was your understanding from the sister's point of view also, is that right?
Yes, sir, but Forsyth still found enough probable cause to list the vehicle as stolen on GCIC, and it was confirmed on our end.
Okay, and I'm not suggesting that anybody did anything wrong. I just want to make sure that the judge understands what was going on. A few hours after the vehicle was taken from the sister's home, the vehicle was recovered in Gwinnett. Is that right?
Yes, sir, and again, I'm not sure on the exact timeline.
That's fine. The sister knew who took it because she was told that her brother had taken the car. That's your understanding. Is that right?
My understanding, yes, sir.
My client had never at any point in time when you're out there tried to distance himself or walk away or pretend that he wasn't associated with the vehicle. Is that right?
Correct, sir.
And he indicated he had every intention to return the vehicle, even though I recognize it was hours after the vehicle had been reported stolen in Forsyth. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
since my client has been arrested, have you spoken to his sister or her husband about them wanting to drop the charges?
No, sir. No one has. I've not made any outcry to them, and no one has attempted to contact me.
Okay, all right, good. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Huslak, any redirect?
Judge, I don't have any redirects. I'll say this for Mr. Lewis's benefit. Information has been relayed to my office that the victims do have interest in dismissing these charges. So I would agree with Mr. Lewis on that.
Judge, he just saved us about 15 minutes, but I'm still going to call my client for about 5 minutes.
Obviously, I'm not the prosecutor who's working this case up, but that information is in the file that they either have already signed an affidavit asking to dismiss, or they intend to do so if they haven't already.
All right.
And this is one.
Hold on.
Sorry,
Can the officer be dismissed?
Yeah, I have no further questions for him, Judge.
Officer Stewart, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry, Mr. Lewis, I wanted to let the officer.
No, that's no problem, Judge. Judge, I had already spoken to the victim also, and that's what they had told me, but that's not something that I like to come onto the Zoom call and announce if they hadn't already spoken to the prosecutor, but that's what they indicated to me. That's what the brother-in-law indicated to me. Judge, I'm going to call my client really just to establish a few other things in terms of the relationship with the sister that has not been brought out. So I'm just going to call him. It should only take about 5 minutes. Raise your right hand, Mr. Stevens. You swear to affirm the testimony presented this afternoon in the case of the state of Georgia versus Wilbert Stevens will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the God. You can put your hand down. You got to make sure you speak louder. There's no whispering here. You got to speak loud enough for them to be able to hear you. You understand that? What's your full name? On the day you were arrested.
Mr. Lewis, I can't hear him at all.
Okay, state your full name.
Wilbert Stevens.
Okay.
On the day that you were arrested, were you living with your sister?
Yes, sir.
How long had you been living with your sister prior to that day? About a month. And were you also working in her business?
Yes, sir.
What type of business did she have?
She has a personal delivery company where she delivered furniture for rooms to go, and I was one of the delivery men that worked for her.
Okay. You took the car from her residence, is that right?
Correct.
When you took the car, did you inform her that you were taking the car?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Did you text her?
Yes, sir.
Had you been in communication with her via text while you were in possession of the car?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When was the last time prior to the police having contact with you, did you actually text or speak with your sister?
Maybe about 30, 45 minutes before when I had contact with the police officer.
Okay. All right, good. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Huslak, any cross?
Based on the scope of the testimony, Judge, I don't have any cross-examination.
All right, I do have one question for your client, Mr. Lewis.
Sure.
Sir, so why did she call it in as stolen? Why do you think?
Because I was gone outside of the time limit. From my text messages in my phone, she knew that I was in possession of the vehicle, and she gave me a certain time to be back, and I wasn't back in that time limit.
Okay, is this a work vehicle? Is it registered to the business or to her?
No, sir. It's her personal vehicle.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just on that, Mr. Lewis, any other questions?
No, Judge, I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Huslak, anything?
No, sir.
All right, anything further for the defense, Mr. Lewis?
No other witnesses only argument, Judge.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't know if the officer signed off, so I'm assuming that he didn't want to call any other witnesses. Judge, respectfully, I think the issue is intention. Again, sometimes the court unfortunately gets involved in a bunch of dysfunctional family stuff, and it plays itself out in the courts, and that's what I think is going on here. I don't know if it was he's living in the house, he's working with her, he takes the vehicle, he tells her he's going to take the vehicle, and of course, in my mind, I'm trying to put myself in this situation. Under what circumstances would I call and report my vehicle stolen if my sister has the vehicle? Maybe 3 weeks later, but definitely not the same day. That absolutely sounded crazy to me. And I think the court could bind it over, even though that sounds crazy. I think the focal point legally is intent. Did he intend to take the car? Did he intend to deprive the owner? Did he intend to keep the car? And I don't think there was any indication of that because of how he because of how he took the car, he texted her, and his failure to disassociate himself from the car when the officers arrived. I think everything indicates that there'd been an overreaction by his sister in calling the police, or maybe she didn't want to look for him. Maybe she just said, "Well, I'll just let the police look for you." But however that goes, Judge, I would argue that bar receiving charges should be dismissed.
Mr. Huslak?
Judge, I think there is sufficient
Evidence
evidence.
from what we've heard to bind this over, regardless of whether or not Mr. Mr. Stevens rather, had permission to take the car, didn't have permission to take the car. I don't think that's dispositive either way. The reality is that at some point, he did exceed the scope of whatever permission was given with this car. And at that point, he is in possession of stolen property. And regardless of whether he intends to keep it permanently, for a day, for a few hours, I don't think that's dispositive either. As soon as he's gone beyond the scope of that permission, at that point, that vehicle is stolen. It was recorded accordingly. And by being in possession of it, he is committed theft by possession of stolen property. So I'd ask this court to bind it over as charged.
All right. Based on the testimony and certainly the parties' stipulation that the victims do not want to press charges, I'm going to dismiss this case. I think the evidence shows that the defendant did not try and distance himself from the car. The police approached the car. He didn't walk away trying to, disclaim it. He said, "Hey, that's my car." And, I don't think we have the intent of depriving the victim of the property, especially with the intention of returning it. Okay, I'm going to dismiss this one.
Yes, Judge.